And there is a lot of debate about, whether it's high enough, whether it should have been increased, and all of that, and the impact of it. And to give us a bit more perspective, we are being joined by former Assemblyman, Mr. Max James. So here to speak to us a little bit this morning. Good morning and welcome to you.
Good morning, Kandace. Thank you for the conversation on the minimum wage issue.
Certainly. So, what's your initial take? When you heard minimum wage is going to be raised by $3, what was your initial opinions on it?
Well, as an employer, when you have to have your wage bill increased is not always rosy. However, having said that, I want to preface the conversation so that the public will understand why the minimum wage and why it is important. But I won't give my own perspective. I'll give the International Labour Organization's perspective on work, minimum wage, and what it all means, because there are essentially four pillars on which what has been developed over the years from the International Labour Organization called decent work. So I will just read from the ILO's website so that the views will not be mine, but will be what has been agreed upon by the international community. So these are not Max James's views in this particular case. So this is what the ILO says in respect of decent work. And it says the International Labour Organization, ILO, defines decent work as productive work for women and men in conditions of freedom, equity, security, and human dignity. So, for example, I have been to the ILO myself when I was a labor secretary in the assembly. And so when we go there as part of the Trinidad and Tobago delegation to consider matters that pertain to labor, this is one of the outcomes of those deliberations. You follow what I'm saying? Right. So it goes on to say, in general, work is considered decent when it pays a fair income. It guarantees a secure form of employment and safe working conditions. Further, promoting jobs and enterprise, guaranteeing rights at work, extending social protection, and promoting social dialogue are the four pillars of the ILO's decent work agenda, with gender as a cross-cutting theme. So there you have it. So that when the government of Trinidad and Tobago determines to or decided to increase the minimum wage from 1750 to 2050, it was securing or seeking to find a way to improve the lot of workers who are otherwise not able to increase their lots through what you call collective bargaining. For the most part, workers who are non-unionized are without that collective protection of within the collective bargaining system would not be able to have and see an increase in their hours of work or their DSP. So that it's a government responsibility to look at the economy, to look at those baskets of goods, and to determine that this might be a fair wage. They may not always get it right. The business community will say it's too much. The unions will say it's too little. So you always have, as they are saying, this social dialogue as to what might end up being or not end up being a fair wage. My own personal view now is that I think it's a fair increase, even though it will cost me a little bit more. But I really do think it's a fair increase. I may not see as some of my other trade union colleagues, because sometimes I come out of retirement and sometimes go back into retirement on these kinds of matters. But I think in this case, it's a fair wage, and it's also a strategic kind of an initiative, because elections are coming just now. And it's a way to tell the society, or the indigent, if you wish, or the working population, let me use a better term, working population in this country, that we are thinking of you, and we are going to always attempt to give you something better. It may be 10 years in coming, or in terms of the sequence, it might be every 10 years or every 15 years, because workers will always say it's not enough. No, you have increased or increasing food prices. You have increase in your gas bill. Household incomes are falling. So it's a measure, I suspect, to increase or to deal with the fall in household incomes or income, and a way to mitigate the high cost of living. So I think in this particular case, to be honest, and I'm not going between, I'm not meandering, I'm not going between whether it's UNC or TPP or PNM. I think as someone who has been schooled in industrial relations, labor studies, labor economics, that it is a fair wage.
And how would this help in terms of those people on the lower end of the spectrum being able to better access, have better spending power in terms of buying groceries and all those basic things that a lot of people are really struggling with right at this point in time?
Yes, and so indeed, so hence it's an attempt by the government to um, mitigate, as I used that term before, the cost, the impact on the lower end of the social spectrum, so to speak. Those of us who are there, remember, they don't have bargaining power. Most of the persons at that level of our society don't have bargaining power. In other words, they are not members of a trade union. They don't belong to a union that might have what you call an RMU, means recognized majority union. And therefore, how do we as a society treat those kind of things? Some of it is perhaps our own fault because we refuse to be unionized and all of that. We don't see the value of it. But notwithstanding, the government, whichever government it is, so I'm using the term in a very generic sense. So the government is seen it fit to give some kind of social protection for that underclass, if you wish, or that class, whichever term is more comfortable with in the society. So they would see it as pertinent and important and good duty, if we could use that term, good duty, to protect that class of workers. Remember, they have a right to life, and they have a right to eat, a right to walk, and a right to be part of the society. It's a basic human right. And therefore, it's always incumbent and important for any government to protect that class of workers. So that I think in this case, they have done the right thing. And we may put a political twist to say that they're preparing for an election, be it so or not. We have seen minimum wage increases over the years. I think it has helped. It has not gone overboard, because if you increase the minimum wage too high, then you have other implications. For example, you have to pay European workers more, because if you increase it too high, you have to maintain what you call the salary or wage differentials. So any government will have to be very careful, and then the impact on employers' ability to pay a huge wage bill, because the workers in this country or in any country, the majority is at that particular level, and therefore, when you increase the minimum wage, it can have deleterious effect on your economy if it's not handled well.
And then, so what impact can this $3 increase right now? I mean, as you said, it's not too high. It's still manageable, but can it have an impact in, let's say, the way that businesses handle their overhead costs?
Yes, because you have to put on more. Let's say you have 20 workers. Perhaps we could do the arithmetic very quickly if we can. So you're talking about 20 workers by 3 by 8. So that the differential between the 1750 and the 2050 is what you have to choose. So you'll have to $3 by 8 by 20 per day. for the end of the fortnight or the end of the month, as the case may be. So that will be the impact on the employer. However, it's good for the economy in the sense that if you increase workers' spending power, they will now in turn purchase more. And so you could see how that expands throughout the economy or the society.
Okay.
So there are implications, yes, for employers, but the economy as a whole will be stimulated in terms of people's power to buy, to purchase, as the case may be.
All right. Well, we're gonna take a pause right here in the conversation because we gotta take a quick break. So viewers, please don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. On Tobago Updates, viewers, we are continuing our conversations this morning with Mr. Max James, who is a former assemblyman in the THA. Oh, there we are. So yes, we are continuing our conversation as we discuss what's going to be happening with the minimum wage increase that will begin. It'll be effective from January 1st, 2024. So we still have a few months to prepare in terms of the business side, the business owners and so on. Still have a few months to prepare for this additional cost to their wage bill. And before we went to the break, we were talking about the implications of this and whether it's a positive, negative. How will our business community be able to shoulder this additional cost? So I want to throw it out to you, Mr. James. Give us an idea of what we might even need to be put in place for us to be able to shoulder the additional costs and not let it have a negative effect on the way we do business in terms of increased prices for goods and services and that sort of thing.
Well, Candice, like I indicated earlier, it's a means of lifting the indigent, if you want to use a term. I'm always careful about that term. Out of the morass, where they are located at the moment. And we could blame government policy. Enough people are not being employed, and the government can only employ so many people. The private sector that we depend on others to, on the other side, to employ workers, they have the work cut out for them. And then you're also talking self-sufficiency, entrepreneurship. We could discuss those in a larger way, perhaps even with a larger panel, in terms of entrepreneurial assistance and development in the country. So those are the kinds of things that will impact how we move forward as a society. Do we have enough entrepreneurial support? What can government do? The assembly in this case can only do so much. So the government and the assembly here as government, the government nationally and the government here in Tobago, we're not seeing the kinds of collaboration. For example, look, we have only a $220 or $260 million, I think it is, forgive my accuracy, in respect of or capital works. If we have capital works, if we can have the capital works going, it will have an increase in employment. And that wage will be much more than the minimum wage. So that we are seeing a budget that has been foisted upon us. We have no control over it. And in this neck of the woods of the country, we are not seeing the policy that has been developed in terms of our capital increases budget-wise that can help the Tobago situation, and year after year we're being pauperized. So that in that context, the minimum wage is welcome, but unemployment is growing in Tobago, and of course, if that's been the case, you will find that there isn't that catchment of persons that the minimum wage can even meet. So we look to the government here in Tobago that is severely circumscribed because they don't have enough money. And we are going cap in hand every year, and which is a very unfortunate situation. Unlike Trinidad, that can deal with this particular case in a different way, the Minister of Finance or a particular ministry, the government has to say, we will appropriate this for Trinidad. In the Tobago case, we can't say that we will appropriate this. We, we are under, if you will, or if you wish, dispute resolution outcome that says 4.3%, 6.9. So we are saddled with that. And therefore, as I said a minute or two ago, the minimum wage will not meet everybody because employers can only employ so many or so much, whichever term you use. All right? And the assembly can also only employ so many as well. So there is a large segment of the population that will still remain um, without the benefit of the minimum wage or even employment through the assembly as a whole. So we are in a dire situation. I think the conversation is rightly meandering to that aspect here this morning where we need as Tobagonians to agitate more for a better share of the national pie. It cannot be where they are extracting our hydrocarbons north and northwest of Tobago, and we are getting very little for it. Something has to break in this year. Who will do it? How it can be done? It's an open question. But something must be said. Certain kinds of actions must be undertaken so as to force the central government to understand that when you give such an atrocious commitment in the budget, you are actually pauperizing Tobagonians more and more. We are left without opportunity. As I framed the backdrop for this particular point, is that the assembly could only do so much. So we can't blame them. The private sector can only do so much. We can't blame them. So, and then when you give us an allocation of a mere $264 million, a decent house is about $1 million, more or less. So you're talking about 264 houses. That's the equivalent. I'm trying to put it in frame it in a way where we can see how we have been treated, so that I suspect the executive council will perhaps agitate the society so as to, in a very significant way, a very robust way. How articulate we may want to be, I don't see that working because we've articulated it. Where I come from, the history of trade unions, most people don't like to hear about trade unions. But I can tell you, I'm going a particular point to a particular point here. It is because of the activities of trade unions that the outcomes which we enjoy today. But once we hear trade unions, we are angry. We don't want to hear these guys. But you are benefiting from their actions in the past. So I'm saying the assembly in this case needs to take up the same kind of tactic that trade unions used. Otherwise, people rise up. So it is incumbent upon the executive council to marshal all of Tobago, that's my view, in certain kinds of actions, so that Trinidad will take notice, the international community will take notice. It's not going to be just we're going to talk and we're going to talk and we're going to talk. We have gone beyond talking. So that this minimum wage question is now, if we put it in its proper place, we will see that a significant percentage of our labor force in Tobago are either underemployed, unemployed, and unfairly remunerated. It opens up a whole new discussion as to how this executive council, in this case, can treat this particular issue of underemployment and unemployment and a fair wage. I would hope, as I said, I've retired a little bit, but certain kinds of social actions need to be marshaled. We cannot continue like this. It must not to be allowed to continue like this.
So, I want to move away a little bit from the minimum wage because, even though the minimum wage is quite important, it there's a greater question as to how we manage the economy. And when you talk to a lot of businesses, the cry is very similar that the economy is not as robust as it should be. We're getting reports from Trinidad, and where the economy has grown a little bit in Trinidad, and they're experiencing surpluses and so on. But that's not the same here in Tobago. And well, I mean, of course, the economy is structured differently, where a lot of the business is dependent on the THA, and the THA is dependent on the central government for funding to be able to engage in projects that would be able to engage businesses. And in a situation where we not getting the money that we wanted, then what is the solution?
Some people don't like it, what I'm going to say now, but it is my view. I'm entitled to a view. It may not coincide with yours.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think the only way out of Tobago's troubles is to secede. It's a very um, solemn kind of a discussion.
Mm-hmm.
It's very sobering. I do not see, Kandace, and I say this to all Tobagonians, I do not see us continuing to live under these kinds of economic circumstances when we have, in fact, significant gas and oil in our waters that God left for us. And it is we have the bigger brother or bigger sister not treating us well. And I don't see for the foreseeable future. You can predict based on the mechanism in the dispute resolution in the Tobago Assembly Act. You can predict Tobago's income. Allocation for the next 20 years, for the next lifetime, if we do nothing about it. So what do? Keep on going cap in hand to the central governments, both UNC and PNM, every year? And what are we getting? You can predict it. You can forecast it.
Yes.
And therefore, it's a discussions are very, we have to have very mature discussions. It's perhaps a discussion that the Executive Council, I would urge them to do so. Let us have the discussion. We have our different opinions. But I think Tobago's security, or economic security, or social security, or livelihood, or being is in the question.
Mm-hmm.
What happens to, so we can't do enough in education, we can't do enough in agriculture, we can't do enough in tourism, we can't do enough in works and infrastructure to develop, or infrastructure. We can't do anything much in terms of our coastal development or port development or general infrastructure in Tobago. What do? Do we sit down and keep stay in the same place where we are and allow others to keep us there? Or businesses can't thrive? The few businesses are here, it's just little bread and butter businesses. You could only employ so many people. And then when all Tobagonians and go down to Trinidad and buy this stuff that's already high, they have to come and sell it here, even higher prices. So we go in also, I think, in my view, Tobagonians, that we all have to think very seriously. It's not about Max James. It's about everybody. And therefore, I am of the very sober opinion that we have to get up and determine whether this is working for us or it's not working for us. If you all believe that you don't like the views I'm espousing and generating, then so be it. But I think when you consider your circumstances and our circumstances here, I think we're left with no other choice than to secede. It cannot continue like that. That's my view.
Well, even if we are to go to a secession, that may take some time. But in the near future, before we could get to that point, is there anything that we can do?
Well, this is the point. There's nothing we can do, because we will preach Paul argues all, as we say. We could jump high, low, jump high, jump low, as we say. Do you think Imbert is going to increase it? Even if he increases it to $300 million, it can't work. It can't pay. So we are left perennially in a set of circumstances that does not work, that do not work for us here in Tobago. We have to make a decision. And then you will continue to blame this assembly, say they're not doing this, they're not doing enough, but they have inherited a whole set of dark circumstances. And when the assembly cannot function, you blame them. What are you blaming them for? We may have our differences internally, but what are you going to blame them for? There are so many roads to fix, the port to be fixed. There's every legal impediment being placed in your way. And we are in dire circumstances. It's like we are the Hamas here in Trinidad and Tobago. Everything is pitted against us. And I think therefore, or I therefore think, or thus, or notwithstanding, whatever, we need to take action now. If you delay it down the road, then it will be action delayed down the road. So, with all due respect, Trinidadians will have to decide whether they want this relationship. And if they want the relationship, they will do more for Tobagonians. A lot of them have a land here and businesses here and interests here too. Right? I mean, if it is working, I am not going to suggest secession. But we cannot have all this wealth. It is ours and we must take it. We have to tell the cabinet, look, because it's essential, and I don't understand that you have a prime minister that is Tobagonian. You have two representatives that are Tobagonian. And they say nothing in terms of what Tobago gets. Our fortunes are being withered away. Do we know how long the gas and oil going to last? So if we have another 15 or 20 years that it may last for, we need to rush in and take that and develop Tobago within the next 15, 20 years.
No, I mean, as you mentioned that point, there was the trade minister, during her budget presentation, stated that the economy is diversified in Trinidad and Tobago. She said that the manufacturing
That's
sector,
Trinidad.
yes,
That's Trinidad, not Tobago.
and they said that, so whenever the opposition keeps coming up and saying that the government is not trying too hard with diversification, she stated that yes, there is diversification, and the numbers are showing it, because there has been an increase in terms of the profits made for other the manufacturing sector and so on. And it seems as though that's where the government is heading. In fact, she actually said it, that the government is focused on developing the manufacturing sector as their form of diversification.
Nonsense talk. Nonsense talk. A stupid talk.
Why do you say that?
Tell me about the manufacturing sector in Tobago. Tell me of any Tobagonian who, I'm not talking making little flour and those kind of little petty thing, that is only nice talk and nice to talk, see. Where is the manufacturing class in Tobago? Who gets the loans? Which bank gives the loans? It's the 1%ers. Let's call this fair and square. I'm not being racist. What is the 1%ers that get that kind of benefit? The banks are not going. And then because the COVID, by government policy, licked up whatever aspirations you had, how are you building it? They tell you defaulted in a loan. And they're not going to give you any money because you defaulted in a loan. So we are dead. We are dead here in Tobago. So they could talk about the manufacturing class in Tobago and what's all the nice things in Trinidad. The assembly doesn't have enough money to lend or to give us grants, as the case may be. So they can't help. And if they're going to help, it wouldn't be any significant help that could help you. And then you can't help everybody. And the people have the ideas, they can't get the funding. They'll go look back at your financial track record, and see you defaulted. And then when they spoke about those grants and those and post-COVID aid, when you look at the conditions, you didn't pay NISA, you didn't do this, you didn't do that here. So they talk about it, but that was for the 1%ers. It didn't filter down as we would have liked to the people, the struggling business people we have here. So we'll always remain in this subsistence mode and situation, because the policies were not designed for the business persons here at that particular level here in Trinidad and Tobago who benefited from it.
Why do you think that the government has been so reluctant to really invest in tourism, whether it is tourism in Trinidad or in Tobago or Trinidad and Tobago as a whole?
Repeat the question.
Why do you think that the government has been reluctant to focus its energies in diversification where tourism, in the tourism sector?
I really don't know, to be honest. It's a question I can't prosecute very well, I'll be honest to say so. But what I could suggest is that they have been focused in this economy on gas and oil. They are now saying, the Minister of Finance is saying, well, the non-oil energy or the non-energy sector has been doing well. He didn't present, in my view, the kinds. It's just a statement he made. He didn't present, in my view, the supporting details to actually show that. And even then, in the Tobago case, we had nothing to show, and they will say our household incomes fell fairly, and they didn't do what they inherited something. And the country, Tobagoans must understand that your administration today inherited over 20 years of decay. The PNM regime over the last, call it say 10 years, 8 years, 10 years, has not done enough for us here in Tobago by way of budgeting, so that if the assembly gets more, you have the economy opens up more because they're able to spend more on infrastructural development, and they have to buy the materials. People will, so that what to do the development work, they have to purchase to do the development work, and they have to employ people to do the development work, and that way the economy is stimulated in all areas, whether it's in housing, whether it's in roads and infrastructure, whether it's your tourism plant, whether it's your agriculture, roads and infrastructure, and all the support systems. So there is where we can't do anything because they have severely shackled you to a minuscule budget, so that we could simply say they are killing us. They are killing us here in Tobago.
So, again, I mean, and I go back to the question of then what do we do? I mean,
We
because
have,
secession, I mean, you're suggesting
so let me
secession,
develop on
but
the secession.
yeah.
I want to tell Tobagonians, again, ad nauseum, we have enough gas and oil. I know people are concerned about their pensions and and their gratuity. Oh God, so if we secede, we will lose all of that. You're not going to lose it. Those things will still remain. The oil companies and the gas companies will have to divert what is being sent to the exchequer to Tobago. So the arrangements will be made to ensure that we get what is ours here in Tobago. Even if we have to pay Trinidad for mining the oil and drilling the oil, well, the companies do the drilling, but that worth out there will now be redirected to Tobago's treasury. And so therefore, I don't think Tobagonians should worry about a secession, because those things will be preserved until we can fully prosecute it and have the political infrastructure, architecture, if you wish, to ensure that we move smoothly and to achieve what we want to achieve. Again, and people are now discussing it, when Williams and APT James, my great uncle, went to England, the British didn't say, you must do this, you must do that, and asking you if you are able to. We begin to doubt ourselves as if we are unable to take up our bed and walk. Tobagonians have to come out of their swaddling clothes, so to speak, and to take up their bed and walk, and to determine our destiny for ourselves. I expect this executive council to lead us in that direction. I'll be very disappointed if they don't. Autonomy is the discussion, and we need to put all the things in place to achieve it, in terms of how we think, how we work productively or not, how we treat with workers and the minimum wage, how we treat with contract workers, how we treat with all aspects of our lives here, how we do our agriculture. Are we really tilling the land? Farmers have been given land and they're not tilling the land. And then when you see you're going to take away the land, they say, and they make a political mess of it. So that we have to be more responsible in all areas as a Tobagonian people. If we seriously want to do the autonomy. That doesn't mean that the autonomy hinges on that. We're supposed to get it anyway. and we determine how we will fix our business here in Tobago, so that I think that we're in a situation where, at that juncture of our existence, where we must take up our bed and walk.
All right. Well, Mr. James, that's how we're going to have to leave the conversation this morning because we are out of time. But we've got a lot more coming up on the program, and I want to thank you for being on with us. So, viewers, please don't go anywhere.